My undergrad degree was in economics, and currently I'm interested in political economy, international and comparative political economy. And my initial interest in economics partly explains why I'm more drawn to studying how the political and economic factors interact with each other. My research interest is mainly about China and East Asia. And as a Korean national, I think China is a very interesting subject, not only because it is a big country and has a lot of influence in the world, but also because Korea and China share some similarity in the culture. But the similarity was actually much smaller than I expected when I first started to study China. After my developing interest in Chinese economics, I realized it's impossible to understand what is going on in that country without really looking into the political side of it. That's why I got into the political science program and started to look more into why these political institutions actually shape the economic outcomes as we see them right now. Currently, I'm looking at how the economic conditions since the late 1990s in China have created conditions for political unrest and also change in how the state approaches domestic issues. And especially I'm interested in how the state approaches labor and migrant labor and their protest behavior. So a lot of people say that China is a monolithic country that suppresses all the protests that is going on domestically, but that is not actually true. And we see a lot of collective action of domestic laborers. And especially I'm looking at the role of migrant workers in the process. The Chinese state has been promoting welfare of domestic migrant workers partly through enacting series of labor laws since the 2008. But I'm arguing that it is not a grand scheme to actually improve labor rights of workers, but more to allocate labor and capital in a more efficient geographical locations. I'm actually interested in this topic from two broader perspectives. One is how we actually look at the role of domestic and international actors in improving labor conditions and workers' rights in developing states. And also the other part is how you're going to view migrant labor issues, not just international migrants, but also domestic migrants. So in the future, I like to continue studying these subjects and probably will involve not only looking at what is going on inside China, but also looking at the interactions between China and other countries. And as a side project, I'm getting more interested in the North Korean refugee issues, which also is at the intersection of these two broader problems.